All right.
Hi, hello everyone. I am Petra, the cybersecurity engineer in Glasgow, and we'll talk a little bit about how we manage incidents and how we try to automate it as much as possible with mainly Jira and Jupyter notebooks. So joining me is Abbas and Luke as well, as Alona mentioned before. So just to give you an idea how we do it, I'm just going to give you a walkthrough on like triggering an incident, how we would do it live. So we'll do a little demo basically. But before we do the demo, let me just explain a little bit how it works. So initially what we've done is we noticed that a lot of incidents have patterns, right? So a lot of incidents have the same questions asked, have the exact same tasks. So we decided to make playbooks. We created a couple of playbooks. So we have a general playbook, which is basically a playbook that gets triggered for any incident. And then if we have like an additional incident, for example, if it's a specific incident regarding a VM, like a server compromise, then we will trigger an additional playbook, which will go kind of on top of the original general playbook. So what we do is we have the whole questions, and so what we define playbook is a set of questions and tasks, and we have all that recorded in Jira. So we have a set of questions and we have a set of tasks. I can show you the playbook in a minute. Once I trigger it, you will see how it looks like. But basically, once we have all of that, we've put it all in Jupyter notebooks, and with the help of our automation team, we created a script that will trigger this playbook, which means that it will create an issue called incident every time that we have an incident, and that will have all the questions and tasks that we want it to have. Once we have completed these questions and tasks, we will also create a report that will be programmatically generated from that. And again, we will be doing that in Jupyter notebooks. So I will walk you before I walk you through the whole process. Abbas, do you have anything else to add?
Yes. Just good afternoon, everyone. I apologize. I had a technical problem. So for an IT person, so that's a bit of. Anyway, so basically, I just want to say good afternoon. Well, my name is Abbas. I'm the head of IT and InfoSec at Glasswall, and Petra just gave us a quick overview of what we're gonna do. But I just want to say, at Glasswall, we are a kind of different at dealing with incidents. I've worked with too many companies where I was incident manager, help desk manager, change manager, and all of this. But at Glasswall, we deal with incidents in a different way. So for us, incidents are not something bad. Well, sometimes they are bad, but for us is it is a good experience for us, a learning experience for us. So that's why we try to drive incidents. So we go and Petra is gonna go through the technicality of the playbooks and all of this, but we just go and do whatever Petra is doing, and she's gonna show you it's a great work. And after that, we take this as a learning curve for us and to make our security better. Our incidents here as an InfoSec team, that are not only security related. So we, as Petra, are gonna go through the playbooks and show you that. By the way, the playbooks is a set of questions related to an incident, and that's things which happen all the time. But as Petra go along and show you the incident, she's gonna show you a generic playbook, which has a set of generic questions. After that, she might run another playbook which is specific to a compromise, to a specific compromise, like she said, like the Windows server, but like a VMware, virtual machine compromise or a server compromise. But our incident model, especially the generic one, it can run anywhere. So basically, slowly we started in. I don't know if I can use injecting, but I start to other teams start to see them. I think it's a good job we are doing in terms of incidents. So they started, to approach us to work with them on, helping them on their incidents. Basically, there's a lot of work going in the background on automating what you see, the playbook, to have kind of an interface on top of that. That's coming soon. But that's what I wanted to say. So I will let Petra now go and demo how we deal with an incident. How automated incident at the Glasswall?
Actually, Abbas, I just want to add the little thing, right? And I'm a little bit late, I apologize, but I joined when you were saying how you guys are happy when you have incidents, right? And I just want to say that that is one of the hardest paradigm shifts that I would say needs to happen. In most organizations, incidents are seen as outliers. Incidents are seen as something that you don't want to see happening. And every time that it happens, almost there's this desire to get rid of it. And even when it's not explicit about getting rid of the incident, because everybody had almost a day job, and they feel they're being pulled away from the incident, and almost they feel that they're going to have to handle the incident plus everything else that occurs. It really rewards getting rid of the incident. And what it means that you don't learn from the incident very well, and you don't keep evolving it. Where when you see incidents as part of your DNA, when you welcome incidents and see incidents as a great way to learn, but also sometimes to drive change, the whole dynamic is different. But I actually to say that management has to create an organizational structure where it is okay for the teams to deallocate their tasks and focus on the incidents, because if you don't do that, then everybody doesn't want to be involved in the incidents. So it's absolutely critical that you evolve to that moment where the teams almost enjoy the incidents and welcome the incidents, because they are a great way to practice what you've been working on, but also to move the needle and to fix things.
And just to add to that, Dennis, to what you said, I mean, we have incidents all the time, and the day when we have like 2-3 days without an incident, if you don't have an incident, I'm not saying like big incident, might be a small incident, or there is something wrong. That means something is not working. I'm telling you, I'm not living in a perfect world. I mean, but if you don't have incidents, you are that is I'm not talking big incidents, but if you don't have like, incidents going on, that will go on all the time, that means there is a problem. That's the way I look at it as well.
Well, and also because what we do is we elevate the rating of the incident, right? So, for example, like you can have, if you imagine P1, P2, P3, P4 is the rating, P1 is maximum, P4 is low. You can have a P3 or P2 incident for the business, so the business is not critical, but in security, we'll inflate that. So we will put more resources into it. We get the management support to dedicate lots of time on it, because we improving things. So what you actually want is more and more to having lots of smaller incidents all the time versus bigger incidents, because a bigger incident is just something that was allowed to almost escalate. So I used to say to the board, right, that my job is not to prevent incidents as a CISO, my job is to prevent crisis, right?
Yes.
And this is what we're doing here. So the more incidents you have, the better you become, and almost the lower the threshold is for what it is to raise an incident. And that's a good thing, because the lower that is, it means the more you're paying attention to what's going on.
Yeah. And one of the things we are doing is just to say, like, we learn from incidents, but we have a lot of things like I'm not saying to prevent incidents, but, we started like, Petra and the team that already put some, let's say, secure development, like best practices on our website. So people, and, so people can go and engineers and developers can go and, check on that, what are the best practices that will allow us to reduce, like, kind of just like incident which we can avoid. And security awareness and all of this is all hopefully contributing to to have these like routine incidents that we can avoid, or that we can avoid them all the time. So these things should help us. So anyway, Petra, all yours now.
Over to you, Petra.
Right. So basically, every time that we hear about an incident, and we mainly hear about incidents from our monitoring tools. So we have our SIMs, we have our automated Slack bots, which alert us of like any possible malicious activity, or any suspicious logins, anything like that. Or even sometimes people alert us of things happening. So anytime that happens, what we do is we go onto our Jupyter servers, which are hosted in AWS, and we access them through Slack. So what we do here is we go into our GW bot, as you see, and then we type JP servers, and it opens up a server for it shows us which server is open. If not, we can open it. Right, and then we get here, like, you know, a couple of notebooks that we've made, and so on. So we go into how to copy a playbook into action, and we open that one. And what happens is we have to type in some things here in the code. So it's a Python script. So basically, we have our Playbook 20, which is a general incident playbook. And here, optional second playbook. Here, we will type Playbook 24, which is like a VM compromise.
So what
playbook.
are you doing here, Petra? So are you like merging two playbooks together?
Yes. So I'm putting one playbook on top of the other one.
Okay. Okay.
Right. And then
Petra, have you showed the playbook in Jira?
I will show you now.
Okay, no, the original
Once I trigger it.
All right, cool, great.
I'll trigger it and I'll show it.
All right, cool.
It's getting there.
All right.
Right. So okay, so yeah, we trigger the playbook.
Petra, who does alert you about incidents? So you were saying, like, you know, we had a couple of people. So did we mention that we have security champions in every single team who are like our voice of security, and if there is any security incident, they will raise it as well?
We do, and not only that they alert us about incidents, they help us manage it, which I'll talk about in a minute. Right, so as you see, the script is running. You know, it's creating all these tasks, and it's going to start creating questions. Once that's done, I'm going to go to Jira and I'm going to open the issue, and I'll run you through all the questions and tasks that we have, and then I'll do a couple of things. And I'll show you how the report gets generated, because obviously, like, after every incident, we want to have a report.
Every line that comes here is 5 clicks in Jira.
I didn't know about that stat, but that's amazing. So
because, and this is the key thing, right? So I always remember that when I used to talk to people about, you know, the scaling in Jira and using incidents to capture everything and all the stuff, the biggest pushback I always got was, you know, that's insane, right? Because, you know, it means that, you think about it, like, you start an incident, and what we're basically saying here is how many items you have there, right? You have about 20, right? So we're almost saying that, you know, just to start an incident, right, we would have to create 20 issues in Jira, right, and link them, which is a massive overhead. But what with a bit of automation, you know, we still have a lot to improve, but look at the power, right? So if you go there, right?
Yeah, so now we have the security incident playbook general, but it's created an issue called incident 107. We will rename it. Right, so what we do is we rename it, let's say VM compromise. Oh, I'm typing in the wrong keyboard. Right, so as you see here, we have, like, you know, kind of like a list of instructions, what needs to be done. Our incident procedure is based on NIST, on the NIST framework for incident management. So I'm going to go a little bit through the questions. So, no, actually, what I'll do, I'll start with
Petra,
the task.
can I ask you just one question? So on the incident, like, who does handle the incident? So do you have a, like, so can you explain this? Like, we have an incident manager, we have an incident communicator, and we have a handler.
Yeah, I will get there. So basically, we have a team that we, you know, put into a Slack channel. We mobilize a team, and then we nominate the incident first responder, which will be and we create issues in Jira for that. So for example, I go here, as you see, and I will create a, so what I'll do,
issue link. Oh,
no, sorry, actually, no, I link it.
yeah.
So has incident first responder. Let's put myself here.
I don't know which person 78.
And then we can put also Abbas as the incident manager. And let's say that it's a small incident in that we don't have
Like,
handlers.
yeah, I mean, handlers are people who are working with, but I mean, communicators, if you want to see there, let's say sometimes it's an incident that we are working on as an internal, like as an engineering team, but it is like, say, for a customer, let's say it happened with a customer. So the communicator will be here, probably the support manager who will make the communication to the customer, as an example.
Yeah. Also, the incident communicator is the one who can write the report in the end.
Yeah.
Right. So as you see here, has incident first responder, has incident manager. This all will be automated and come into the report as well, as I'll show it later on. Right. So if we go to the tasks, so we have a task called create Jira incident, which we've done. So we, transition is done, but I won't go through, do all of that. But determine incident severity. So as Dennis was mentioning, we have like the incident severities, P1 to P5. We discussed vulnerability strategy with head of InfoSec. That's one of the tasks as well, basically, because we found a vulnerability that, triggered this incident. So we're going to have to discuss it at some point with the head of InfoSec. Write the learning.
Petra, can I just interrupt? So just to say that the tasks here are not in order. So basically, first thing we do is create a Jira incident. After that, we do a Slack channel and all of this. Petra is going through them, but they're not in order here. But I mean, there is an order we go through, like, Jira incident. We create a Jira incident, and after that, we put everyone on a Slack channel. So we'll get to that. Petra will get to that in a second. But I just want to say they're not in order, so it might not make sense, the logic of the ordering at the moment.
Yeah, good point, Abbas. They were in order, but I think something happened to our playbook, because I have two issues here that don't make sense, but we'll look into that. But anyway, yeah, so, and then we have start Slack channel with incident name and mobilize team. This is a task about, like, which I mentioned earlier. We start a Slack channel, we put our security champions in it, we put all the relevant people in it that we think need to be present. Determine playbook status in Slack and activate playbook, which we've done. Identify immediate steps to prevent further harm, which the first responder does anyway. So, like, for example, if a VM's compromised, shutting down the VM, restricting access, whatever steps need to be made to prevent lateral movement and further damage. Identify steps necessary to regain and ensure business continuity. So do we need to spin up another server? That's all like part of this task. Depending on severity, notify execs. So of course, if it's a major incident, then we need to notify the executive team. They need to be aware of what's happening. Contact the retained third-party IT companies. So if there was any, third-party IT companies involved, we need to notify them. This is what, like, we can assign this task to the incident communicator, for example. Notified authorities and IC if applicable. We have a list of links, which are in the playbook, which we use. So for UK, it's action fraud. So, ICO, if there was any data breach, we need to, make sure that we communicate with.
On this bit, just want to say, because, one of the great job the team did, Petra and the team, is on the questions, like, which we'll get from the police or the cybercrime people. So Petra already created as well a playbook for that. So we don't have, because we already know what they are going to ask us for. So we don't have to go through this every single time. So we have a playbook that we can fill in there, and we just send them everything in one go, so they don't have to come back to us and we go back to them and look. Yeah, so that will make it very neat.
This is exactly what Abbas is talking about. So, because I triggered the VM compromise playbook, we already have a set of questions that the NCA will ask us.
Amazing.
So what we do is we answer these questions already in Jira. So therefore, when we communicate with the authorities and they start asking these questions, we already have the answers ready for them. Yeah. So, right, and then yes, we were
just on that one, right? I think it's the thing about this, right, is also, you know, the fact that we have a huge amount of attention to detail, right? The point is to capture everything that we do in a task and a ticket, and there will be different types of issue types that you'll see in a second, I think. But you know, to have this level of information and granularity is golden when you're trying to understand what's happening and you try to make sure there's one central place of information to occur, because the alternative is to have this data in a Slack channel, which is a gigantic Slack salad, or all sorts of mailing lists, or all sorts of misinformation. And it's super important, even when you do, you know, further analysis after the incident, to understand what question did we ask at what moment in time, what answer did we give at what moment in time, and everything is logged, right? So it's absolutely critical to have this level of attention to detail, because when you don't, the incident's a lot more complicated to manage, a lot more expensive, and a lot more actually tiring for everybody. And a lot of times when it gets to a level of complexity, you lose a lot of valuable threads, and you can't scale from a point of view of engagement, because if you look at this level of details, a lot of these are easier to delegate because each person can take a particular ticket, and then that's their responsibility.
Yeah. Okay, so the next task is ensure other company assets are not prone to the same vulnerability, because for example, if one of our VMs was compromised because it had weak credentials, we want to really make sure, you know, go back to our VMs and check if they, you know, if for example, when they were set up with weak credentials. So then we start the documentation. Here we have something called timeline. And what I do here is in the description, I wrote a couple of bullet points. I can say 13th of January, alert from Azure about VM compromise. I'm keeping this dead simple just for the purposes of this. Right, and then we have, we can write the time as well. And this all sometimes, because everything happens in Slack, this sometimes gets, you know, all of these events get picked up from Slack. But, you know, Slack is not a good way to, you know, keep a database of events. So obviously we want to translate everything here. And then, for example, I will put here VM taken offline. Right, so I'll create it as a bullet point, and I'll show you what happens with this later. Basically, what will happen with this, the automation that creates the incident report will also create events from this.
So a timeline becomes an event, right?
Yeah, so we have these bullet points become events.
Yeah. And the answers to the questions become facts. Cool.
Exactly. So I will answer a question just to have something. So we answer all the questions with full sentences. So for example, the port open was 22, the ports.
Classic.
The ports open on the VM. It's nice to write like which VM, blah, blah, just to kind of denotate that I want to be specific. We're 2280 and yeah, 5, 4, 3. All right, so we have, that was the open port. So I just answered one question just to kind of demonstrate later what happens. Right, we are here with right, create events and analyze acquired evidence. So here, we list all the evidence, like an evidence log. So we can put VM image, because that's an evidence, right? And that we can also append here. Or if we can't, append a whole VM image, obviously, we can, have like a repository where we upload that and just put the link here. And let's go back. And then we have root cause analysis. Obviously, we need to analyze why this happened. What was the root cause of this event? Create a series of diagrams. Now, that happens when we have the whole playbook sorted. We will have some vulnerabilities, risks, security controls. We can also, by using the same GW bot or Jupyter notebooks, we can create a graph. Then we go risk assessment. Now, this task asks us to create vulnerabilities, risks, and security controls. And I will do that because, as you see, as I'll show later, this will also go into the report. So I will create a vulnerability here. And that vulnerability actually created this event.
Here, you'll see that we have tons of issue types, which are very important. They provide lots of context.
Sorry, Dennis, you're breaking off.
Oh, sorry. I was saying that, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I was saying that we have lots of issue types. But one of the things that we end up using Jira in a particular way is that each project tends to only have one issue type, which has the same name. So you can see this is a vulnerability project that has a particular item, which is called vulnerability, which is, you can see the issue type here is type vulnerability. And then it matters because in Jira, it means that the ID, for example, says vulnerable or vulnerable 1, vulnerable 2, etc., which gives you context. So you can see the risk is the risk project with a risk issue type. And also the issue type links are very important because what you want is you want to be able to read this in English. So you can see in this case, what we're basically saying that you're going to have a task, an incident created a vulnerability, who is then a risk of, has a particular risk. And this is how we basically are creating the graph and you're connecting all the dots. And ideally, these risks should then link to other risks. And then you have a full tree into your risk framework.
So the way we try to denominate our risks is using the OSRU framework. We're still perfecting that, so I hope we're doing this right. But what we're trying to do is have every risk has a source, an event, and a consequence. So source here is weak credentials, enabling. So basically the risks are quite granular, enabling possible brute force attack on Azure VM causing unplanned costs or reputational damage. So the brute force attack would be the event, and unplanned costs and reputational damage would be the consequence. So we create the risk, and now I'll go into this because I'll show you. We have also a risk level here. We have.
Petra, was it 107, the incident number?
Yeah, 107.
Okay. I'm just doing something on the side. So.
All right. So we have basically here we have fields which we put like, risk level, risk impact, and risk possibility. We use a risk matrix that we can. What we do is we use a risk matrix to determine this. So I'll show you where it is. This one. For some reason, the thumbnails never show up. All right, so this is how we determine the incident severity level, and this is our risk matrix. that we use for the likelihood and impact. Right, so we have these fields here. If we go back to the vulnerability, obviously we want to do some security controls, right? So we can create a security control. Right, so the security control would be, so what can we do about weak credentials? Enforce strong credential usage. I'm keeping this dead simple just for the purpose of this demo. All right, so this is a security control. So now when, at the end, this will create quite a nice graph about the whole incident. But this will also go into the report, which I will show later on. Right, so if we go back to our incident, right, so diagrams, risk assessment, identify next steps. Do we need to update policies, processes, identify controls? We have identified the controls. We can maybe update our policies to say, strong credentials, need to be enforced. So we can update our policies if they haven't been already containing that. Trigger playbook 20 security incident general, which is done. That's just in case that only the VM playbook gets triggered. So it's just a reminder. So we can put that this task is cancelled, for example, because we've already done that. Remove the compromised device from the network by unplugging it or disabling network connection. Do not power down the machine. This is in case it's a physical machine. Disable or change the password of the compromised account. Backup all data and logs. And if the system is to be reused, rebuild the system. If it needs to go into the production environment. Now, this would be some questions that I'm going to go through. There's quite a lot of them because I've triggered 2 playbooks. So we have, what's the impact? What company assets were involved? Was there any sensitive personal data exposed? Were there any Glasgow policies breached? What was the threat vector? So we can also create a threat agent, and that will show in the report. Is business continuity ensured? Do we have a disaster recovery plan? What are the next steps in preparation for future incidents? That's all. These questions are all here because, the NIST framework also recommends, stages of incident management, and preparation is one of them. What is the residual risk strategy? So if we've addressed some, if we, included some controls, we've addressed some vulnerabilities, what is our residual risk? Are we going to accept the residual risk? What is the incident resolution? How did we find out about the incident? How did our monitoring systems alert us? Now, this question is important because if we found out by someone sending us an email and saying, oh, I noticed this, we should think about why did we not have our monitoring systems alert us on this? We really want to find out about incidents as soon as possible. I mean, in cybersecurity, incidents are really hard to prevent sometimes, but if you have a good way of detecting them, then you can actually go home and sleep at night. What is the history of this account and which team did it belong to? That's because of, where is the VM? Let's say if it's in Azure, was it on a development, subscription? What's the purpose of the account? So what was, as I said, was it a production system or was it just a testing account? What was was this a production server? If this was a cloud VM, which subscription was it on? What company assets were on that account? So this is because of lateral movement. Like, for example, if if one of the VMs was compromised, are other VMs in the same account subnet on the cloud compromised? What other company assets might be involved? What were the credentials for the machine? So this is an important question because obviously if it was admin, then, we know we have an idea how the attacker got in. But most of the time, our alerts are quite granular. They tells us what happened, or even the logs, which ports were on this machine. And then we have questions from the NCA. So these are like the frequently asked questions from the NCA, from the authorities, which they might ask us. So when we craft an email for them, we can already include all this information. So can you confirm when was the server compromised? When did you discover the compromise? What was the extent of the compromise on the network, and what part of the network was accessed? What steps have we taken to secure the network? Did we assess our network to be secure now? If the network has been used to put, our clients at risk, they need to know who are our clients. So now this is a tricky question, because a lot of times you don't really want to disclose clients, but I think for the NCA, for the authorities, is important, because if it was a governmental organization, then obviously they need to notify them, and actions need to be taken. Could you confirm the location of the compromised infrastructure? And a lot of times they ask for the reference number when it's reported to Action Fraud, when they send you an email. So these are like the questions and tasks that are related to our VM compromise. Now, the next step, let's say that we've done all the tasks, we answered all the questions, we're happy with the resolution, we secured our premises, we've changed the password, we've made sure that we preserved all the evidence that's required. Obviously, if it's a massive attack, then I don't know where the question got lost here, but there was a question on, did we consider hiring a third-party company which will do our digital forensics? Because if it's a small incident internally, we don't need that. But if it's a massive incident, for example, if someone used our VM and committed major cybercrime, inflicted millions of damage and data leakage, we're not going to go and mess with it ourselves, even though we are trained in digital forensics, and we know the procedure of preserving digital evidence, and we have read all the guidelines that come from the authorities on that. If we go in and touch that evidence, and that evidence doesn't get accepted in court because we haven't followed the exact procedure, then obviously that's not going to be good at the end of the day for us. So if it's if there was a lot of legal issues regarding this incident, we really want to hire a third-party company to do our digital forensic analysis and make sure that the evidence stays preserved.
But I just want to say that usually, you already have a relationship with that incident management company. They show you how to save, how do we save logs and stuff like that. So so you should have that ability to save. And I mean, usually you make the communication with the incident management company before you had an incident. So these people will train you how do you save your logs and stuff like that without tampering any incidents, any evidence. Sorry.
Yeah, I think someone tampered with my playbook, because this question is definitely there.
I mean, if Luke wasn't on the call, I would have said like operations, but he's on the call.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. So now I will show you how do we go about creating a report. So we go back onto our Jupyter notebooks, and we go into this notebook, this little gem. Right. So we trigger this playbook. Which incident do you want to generate the report for? So we say incident. No, that was 07. And what was the name of the report? So we will put draft, because all our reports are first made as draft, because sometimes the person who will trigger this report, might not be the person managing the incident, or might not be the person who's most trained in incident management. So it's always important to put draft first, and then you will get a final sign-off from the incident manager. So, draft report 107. And then we trigger the rest. Oh no. Okay, let's try again. All right. So now once this runs,
Petra, what you're doing there is actually running the cells, right?
Yeah. I had to run all the cells.
And you can see, look, there's lots of stuff to improve here, right? Again, we're trying to open source as much as we can on this, right? But then one of the next steps is start to improve, the code, create APIs for this, so that the code gets simpler and simpler and simpler.
Also, possibly like a simple user interface.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's what we. That's one of the things we need to improve. I mean, having that interface so anyone can run the incident, so they can select their playbook. Let's say if there's customer support, they can select the customer support playbook and just run it.
And through the same interface, and through the same interface, run the playbook and also run the report in the end.
Absolutely.
Right. So if we go here, back to our, we will find draft 107. What we'll do is we download it. And it's going to be in my downloads. 1 second. And I will open this in a minute. And voila.
And each of these little things, right? It's almost like you can see there's a collection of lots and lots of little steps that we've been automating, but each of these makes a massive difference. Which is also why the team has a good experience in running incidents, right?
I remember the first incident, Dennis, I did do there manually. It took me just to input everything. It took me like 2 hours just to input stuff on Jira and link stuff. Just linkage. So,
yeah. Sorry, I'm cautious because we're running out of time. I'm just gonna quickly go through this, and then you guys can say the rest what you wanted to say. So we have our contents here that gets generated, an evidence log. As you remember, guys, I was listing the evidence. So VM image, root cause analysis. I didn't write anything, so it's just instructions that got generated. Vulnerabilities, we have a risk. Remember that we created a risk issue. And even we have, the risk level, the impact, the possibility, everything is generated into this. Security controls, this is what we've, also created an issue. We have a learnings here, obviously because we haven't written anything, is just generated this. And then as you see incident manager, Abbas Haidar is here. If I would have put in an incident communicator, then it would have generated it here. But we can also, every report has to be run through, checked manually. You can't just, shoot this up. So obviously we go through the whole thing. We put it into a Glasswall template, and then we save it as PDF in Jira. And that's it from me. Abbas and Dennis, I don't know if you wanted to, and Luke, add anything.
I just need you, if you click on in the chat, I've pasted the photo of the incident, how it is linked to the question and stuff like that. If you can open that and show it on the chat. It's called Risk Dashboard. So
1 second.
Take your time. So I just want to show, this is just a very, very simple command just to show you that the power of Jira and graphs.
And Luke, do you want to add some comments on basically your role and basically in the team that you have that is actually helping to make this happen?
Yeah, of course, happy to. I mean, as you can see, the more of our organization that exists on Jira, the better for us. It allows us to get good visibility. So for me, kind of good measurement, right? The more we can see, the more we can measure, and then the more we can manage. So we have people working, almost full time. Some contractors, some freelancers, some employees. We have functions which run on a continuous basis every 10 minutes or so, which export all of our Jira issues into an Elastic database, which we then query to build some of the reports that we see. Well, to build, let's say, to build the graphs. So we're using pandas, we're using Python, and we're using Jupyter notebooks to query all the issues which live in Elastic. And based on an anchor and based on criteria, we can then generate any kind of a data frame in a Jupyter notebook. And what we're also doing on the side, which is really cool, we have a lot of notebooks which automatically generate that kind of visualization or that graph or that data frame, and then push it to a Google Sheet, which is a lot more consumable than expecting all of our stakeholders to consume data from a Jupyter notebook if they're less of a technical audience. Not only are we doing that, after that, we can also then do a lot more customization. Once the data is in a Google Sheet, we can massage it and manipulate it to be more consumable by the target audience. And then to make things even easier, we'll push that then to a set of Google Slides, which is easily then convertible to PDF. So, the same team that's done this automation around the playbooks for the incident automation and generation is also generating some reports which get sent emailed to a weekly basis with a URL to a Google Sheet and an attached PDF, all of which is automatically ingested into our environment where we do the data manipulation in Jupyter notebooks, and then again push to slides, push to a PDF, push to Google Sheets, and emailed to the stakeholders. So depending on who the stakeholder is, they might want to consume it in different ways. Similarly, as you can see with the graph that's been generated that Petra is sharing now, we have a Slack bot, which we can communicate with in almost a CLI type of a fashion, where again, sometimes it's easier to push via a command line to the Slack bot, present this information to me in an image, which is easy to consume, and you don't have to leave the environment that you're already communicating and kind of getting information in, and having to go into a separate website and kind of trawl through Jira to find what you want, or launch a Jupyter notebook and run a query and see it like that. So we're trying to make things easier to consume, depending on who the user is, who the stakeholder is, who needs to see that data. And Jira is just one. Again, it's not the source of truth of everything, but because it's got a graph database behind it, we can connect the dots. And if we can connect the dots, we can create the perspective that we need to understand the work that's ongoing, which is really, really, really cool. And Jira is just one data source that we can push into Elastic. We're also pulling down CSVs and consuming those in the notebooks and then generating data based on that. So we can ingest different data sources into a queryable database. We can manipulate the database in a notebook, and then we can push it to the stakeholder in a visual, consumable, representation that makes sense to them. I think that's just a bit of a speech for me. And a lot of this happens behind the scenes, and a lot of this happens overnight, which is really cool. So for people like Petra and Abbas and myself, when we need changes, or when we need evolution, or we need a different type of report from a different perspective, we'll just drop the tasks into some people who are helping us build this, who are working around the clock, all in different time zones around the world. And we come back the next morning and we've got a new report, which is super, super cool. Yeah. And your schema is always evolving. The more objects, the more nodes in our organization that get put onto Jira, the better context we provide. So this incident can lead to a department which is affected, can link to a customer which might be infected, can link to stakeholders that need to be communicated to, can link to risks, vulnerability. It's endless. And the more dots we can connect, and the more context we can provide around each piece of work that we're doing, and each type of kind of report that we're generating.
Amen. It's all about the graph, right? That's the thing. All right, yeah. Petra, I think we need to wrap up because we need to start another Open Security Summit session.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's it from me. If we don't have time, yeah, I hope that this was useful to everyone. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on the Open Security Summit Slack channels, and we'll be happy to help.
Cool.
Thank you, everyone.
Great work, team. Man, I'm really proud of this. Great stuff.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.